We often talk about information overload, that feeling that we are just drowning in data points and articles. But today we're doing a deep dive into an entirely different kind of source material,
Mm.
the deep, complex, and highly romantic tapestry of a hereditary witch's life, her business, and the sheer chaos that happens when she collides with a cynical Hollywood storyteller.
It's an extraordinary file you've given us. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
all centered on Morgana Donovan, the witch, and Nash Kirkland, the screenwriter. So our mission today is to really unpack the Donovan legacy, the ancient power, the very intricate family structure, and the serious, deeply moral nature of what they call the craft.
And we absolutely have to analyze how that moral system, which dictates everything Morgana does, withstands or maybe even succumbs to the profoundly intense emotional and magical consequences of this relationship. It's just the ultimate collision of worldviews.
It is. The central conflict is just perfect because it highlights this chasm between belief and commodity. I mean, how does a powerful hereditary witch rooted in ancient Celtic heritage and dedicated to the absolute rule of "and it harm none,"
The core ethic,
the
right?
absolute core ethic of their tradition, how does she deal with a man who sees her extraordinary gifts as nothing more than profitable stories and, well, disposable entertainment?
He literally researches this stuff, vampires, werewolves, goblins, not because he believes in any of it. He does it because he knows it sells tickets.
Mhm.
He writes about monsters to escape his own reality, and now reality is sitting right across from him, beautiful and powerful, and ready to prove him very, very wrong.
And the whole narrative just kicks off with this immediate, overwhelming intrigue. Morgana's birth wasn't just a biological event, it was a seismic, magical, and symbolic occurrence. We learned she was born the night the ancient sacred witch tree fell, right there on the Monterey coast.
The source material gives us such a visceral, almost shocking description of that moment. It says she was born, and immediately, with her very first breath, she tasted the power, the richness of it, and the bitterness.
Uh-huh.
That bitterness right there, that's the key. That's the foreshadowing of the profound responsibility she carries.
Exactly. And the community divides right away. Some people call the falling tree a sign, others just call it a coincidence. But in the secret places where magic still thrives, the green hills of Ireland, the misty moors of Cornwall, her arrival was celebrated. It was a confirmation of the bloodline. The fall of that old sacred tree was described as a quiet sacrifice, marking the arrival of the new witch.
And that sacrifice really cements her power as this fixed innate trait. It wasn't something she chose. It's as much a part of her as the color of her eyes. It reinforces the central lesson she have to carry, that the purest magic is in the heart. And that is the theme that will be constantly, constantly tested by Nash's cynicism. So let's unpack this legacy because it's rich, deeply historical, and highly structured. We'll start with section 1.1, the roots of power, birth and heritage. The fact that her birth is physically marked, a stone marker in Monterey where the witch tree once stood, that anchors the magic in reality, not just myth.
And this dual reality is Morgana's constant challenge. That marker sets up the division. For the non-believers, it's just, local color, a nice hook for a tourist for sure. But for those who know, it's confirmation that her power is tethered to the physical world, to the very land. It's far from just local folklore, though. It's a chain that has spanned centuries, described as being tempered by the strength of truth.
Tell us more about the strength of that truth, because the lineage is so specific. We're talking about a heritage that traces all the way back to Finn of the Celts, which establishes the elvish blood that defines her as a hereditary witch. What does that particular lineage imply about the nature of her power, beyond just, having magic?
Well, that phrase, Finn of the Celts, is absolutely critical because it roots the Donovan legacy not just in paganism, but in the most ancient mythological Irish and Celtic traditions. Elvish blood doesn't necessarily mean she's part elf in the way we might think. It implies her bloodline is so old, so intrinsically linked to the land and the original nature spirits, that her abilities manifest differently. It implies a heightened connection to the elements, an innate wisdom about life cycles, and maybe even a kind of longevity.
So it's not just that she can do magic, it's that she's almost fated to do it. And it has to be channeled through this ancient moral framework.
Precisely. That heritage means her power is intrinsically linked to very specific mystical locations. Ireland, Cornwall, Wales, Brittany. These aren't just places on a map. They are sites where the ancient energy, the true, untamed magic, still thrives. This reinforces that her abilities are not learned from some how-to book. They're passed down through the bloodline, and that transmission comes with a profound, non-negotiable set of responsibility.
Which gives us the perfect transition into section 1.2, the modern witch. business and boundaries. Because Morgana doesn't live in a cave somewhere. She runs a sophisticated, ambitious, and highly successful business called WCTA in Monterey. And the name choice, the Old English word for witch, that's a statement in itself. She completely owns her identity.
And the description of the shop is paramount to understanding her approach. This is not some dusty, stereotype-filled place. It's run more like a high-end gallery or a museum. The window display alone shows this flair for the dramatic and the curated. You get this image of deep blue velvet that looks like a dark river, and then clusters of crystals rose, aqua, royal purple, ink black-shaped, not like rough stones, but like precise wands or these surrealistic sparkling castles.
I found the inventory specifics so compelling because they immediately undercut that pop culture stereotype. You go inside, and yes, there's a pewter lamp fashioned like a winged dragon with glowing red eyes, but the practical inventory is things like dainty bottles of colored liquids labeled for culinary uses, potpourri, and relaxing rosemary bath balm.
This is deliberate. She is selling comfort and natural remedies, things that enhance life without manipulating fate. She is professionalizing the image of the witch. And this professionalism is entirely consistent with the core rules of the craft, specifically the principle of "and it harm none." This principle is the absolute ethical boundary she maintains, no exceptions.
And this is where we get that fantastic illustrative anecdote about Mrs. Littleton. Morgana refuses outright to use her power for profit or for frivolous things. Mrs. Littleton comes in and wants Morgana to cast a spell so her grandniece Jessie can get a prom date with a boy named Matthew Brody. And Morgana just flatly refuses.
Right. She calls the request frivolous, but her explanation shows the real depth of this moral code. The power to change fate, even for something that seems as small as a teenage girl's prom night, is monumental. Morgana explains that altering fate for one night could alter it for centuries. It's not a minor, harmless tweak. It's playing with destiny on a cosmic scale. If Jessie gets Matthew Brody because of magic, she might miss the man she was meant to marry, and that could change generations of future Donovans or hundreds of other people. The stakes are impossibly high.
And this responsibility, she stresses to Nash, is exactly why magic cannot be learned from some silly book like Fame, Fortune, and Romance. Candle Rituals for Every Need. That book is the antithesis of the Donovan tradition. It promises instant gratification and easy solutions. It's dangerous.
She uses a really chilling example to hammer home the consequences. Wishing for money, for instance, might result in a relative's sudden death, allowing the wisher to inherit. Actions have consequences, she warns him. That ethical barrier is also why she doesn't belong to a coven. She prefers to work alone, noting that some groups dabble in things best left locked. That's a clear, cold reference to black magic or other dangerous, quick-fix practices. Her commitment to the White Witch path is absolute, making her a person of immense integrity, magical or otherwise.
Integrity is the word. Now, moving beyond just Morgana, let's look at Section 1.3, the extended family and their talents, because her power is part of an equally unique and strong family structure. The fathers of Morgana, Sebastian, and Anastasia were triplets who married triplet sisters, yet fate decreed they would only have one child each.
Yeah, the use of triplets and that limitation to one child each implies this powerful fated structure, a trinity designed to concentrate and preserve the magical bloodline. They are a tightly knit, incredibly powerful trio of cousins, and each one specializes in a different aspect of the craft.
Let's start with her mother, Morgana Donovan, who is often away in Castle Donovan in Ireland. She's a revered author of children's books and fantasy. Titles like Four Golden Balls, The Fairy King, and Whistle Up the Wind. And this is the first crack we see in Nash Kirkland's cynical armor.
Yes, it's such a beautiful contradiction. Nash, the man who writes about calculated evil for profit, is a huge, lifelong fan of Bryna's morally rich fantasy. He says her work combines poetry and magic and morality. His respect for Bryna's ethical storytelling shows he actually knows the difference between commercial junk and genuine narrative truth. It proves there is a hidden, yearning heart beneath his cynical shell.
Now, on to the cousins. Sebastian, the powerful psychic and medium, he is so respected by law enforcement that he's credited with solving high-profile cases, like the Yuppie Killer case in Seattle. But the source material really emphasizes the high cost of this talent.
Sebastian's ability is not a parlor trick at all. It's a psychic burden. He carries the grief of the unseen world. He suffers intensely over cases like the kidnapped boy they didn't reach in time. Morgana recognizes the heavy toll this work takes on him. His power is a service, but it causes him intense emotional pain. It really grounds the magic in emotional reality. It hurts, it's draining, it's not fun.
And Sebastian Morgana's dynamic is often prickly, but it's rooted in that deep tribal loyalty. When you are a hereditary witch or a powerful medium, family is the only group that truly understands the bizarre reality you inhabit every day.
Then there is Anastasia, the calm, soothing voice of reason in the family. Her specialty is tending these extensive gardens, a talent Morgana admits she completely lacks, and she's an empath. She can immediately sense Sebastian's pain or the growing tension between Morgana and Nash. She is the grounding, nurturing force of the trio, balancing Morgana's focused vision and Sebastian's emotional intensity.
And we cannot overlook the most immediate judges of Nash's character, the animals. Morgana's pets, Luna, a huge white cat with amber eyes, and Pan, a sleek silver dog, possibly a wolf hybrid, with deep blue eyes. They are described as excellent judges of character.
This is an ancient trope often associated with witches, the idea that animals possess an intuitive morality and can see right past human pretense. Luna's immediate, almost lusty purr of approval for Nash is a significant early signal to Morgana and to us that his core self is not the cynic he presents to the world.
And Pan, the dog, initially sends out these unfriendly barks, which is maybe the protective lone wolf part of Morgana's nature, but he quickly shifts to accepting Nash's touch, licking his hand. Morgana herself notes that Pan is not given to making friends so quickly. This confirms that Nash passes a very ancient and intuitive test that his own intelligence and cynicism can't get around. The animals see his truth before he even admits it to himself.
So now we pivot completely to the man who represents the modern, disposable, emotionally detached world. In Section 2.1, the philosophy of Hollywood horror, Nash Kirkland embodies the ultimate cynic. He's a highly successful screenwriter, paid vast sums of money to turn human fears into 2 hours of profitable entertainment.
His whole professional identity is built on manufacturing fear. He views the supernatural purely as entertainment, delighting in giving the masses chills for the price of a movie ticket. But his work ethic is meticulous. We learned about the research he did for his film Midnight Blood, which included spending a week in Romania interviewing a man who swore he was a descendant of Vlad the Impaler.
He brings genuine detail to his fantasy, but that doesn't mean he believes in it. In fact, his meticulous research is part of his defense mechanism. He believes he knows, better than anyone, that his stories about goblins, werewolves, the Walking Dead are just that, stories. They are a door he offers the masses to escape reality, and he sells that escape for pots of money.
And his rules for storytelling, his horror commandments, as he calls them, they reflect his own cynical worldview. There must be ultimate good versus ultimate evil, and the innocent must suffer or spill blood, which he sees as a rite of passage.
But the final commandment is the most revealing of all. Good must triumph, but always with that final, dark twist that leaves the audience wondering if whatever evil that's been vanquished slinked free again after the final fade-out. He refuses to allow a complete, clean victory. That lingering doubt defines his professional worldview and, as we will see, his personal one. He just can't allow happiness to exist without the threat of collapse.
That need for lingering doubt, that refusal of certainty, is directly traceable to the deep, painful history we find in Section 2.2, a history of running away. His cynicism isn't intellectual. It's a carefully constructed defense mechanism built layer by layer during a really tumultuous childhood.
His early life was instability personified. He was raised by an intolerant grandmother, shifting between sporadic stays in various foster homes. His imagination wasn't a recreational tool. It was his portable, unbreakable fortress. It was the only way he could escape a reality that constantly threatened him.
The trauma is deeply rooted, and the source material anchors it in this anecdote of the red bicycle. At nearly 12 years old, he was embarrassed that he couldn't ride the second-hand bike given to him by the kind Henderson foster family. And the simple act of Mrs. Henderson waking up early just to teach him, running alongside him, showing him genuine, unearned affection, it just shattered his emotional defenses.
Let's analyze that moment for a second. Mrs. Henderson's tears when he finally wobbled down the sidewalk on his own weren't pity. They were genuine pride and affection. That single memory represents the pure, stable, vulnerable connection that Nash seeks and simultaneously fears most in the world. He associates vulnerability with pain and love with eventual abandonment.
And that fear of connection was solidified by his biological mother, Leanne. She abandoned him 2 days after his birth, leaving him with his grandmother. When she resurfaced 26 years later, she was a stranger painted up like a Cupid doll, only asking for money and insisting that Nash owed her.
This is the ultimate betrayal. She resurfaces not to reconnect, but to validate his worst fear, that love is transactional and always has a hidden price tag. His response now is to send her, his aunt, and his cousins checks to maintain his distance and close that all off. Money is the price of his emotional freedom. He pays people off so he never has to be vulnerable again.
This overwhelming fear manifests directly in Section 2.3. Fear of permanence and the criticisms of others. He sincerely believes he is not meant for a conventional relationship. His imagination paints this dreary, almost horror movie scenario of what marriage looks like.
He visualizes a messy house, a weary man in a dark suit, and a pregnant, angry wife in a ratty bathrobe. That image isn't love. It's the domestic chaos and emotional suffocation he associates with the instability of his childhood. He has zero template for what a healthy, permanent, stable relationship looks like.
And his ex-lover, Dee Dee Driscoll, hit him exactly where it hurt. She accused him of being a selfish little boy, emotionally retarded, who preferred playing with his monsters, his predictable, controllable stories, over a serious adult relationship.
While it's harsh, her criticism is entirely consistent with his behavior. He prides himself on being the lone wolf, unattached and unencumbered. His past history of abandonment serves as the perfect, rational justification for avoiding deep commitment. He had to run away to survive as a child, and now, even when he finds something good, he keeps running because in his mind, running is surviving. He controls the ending by leaving first.
So we bring the ancient power Morgana into direct collision with the cynical storyteller, Nash. The initial friction in Section 3.1. Initial chemistry and conflict is electric. I mean, literally. Nash is instantly captivated by Morgana, describing her as dazzling. But he immediately falls for his own stereotype, mistaking the lavishly built blonde employee Mindy for the witch.
That mistake is so telling. He was looking for the theatrical, stereotypical witch with the lethal-looking red nails. When the real Morgana introduces herself, she doesn't fit the script, and that forces him to discard his preconceived notions immediately.
The shock is physical when they shake hands. When he takes her hand, he hisses out of breath because an intense jolt of electricity, a physical manifestation of her power, goes zinging up to his shoulder. This is not just attraction. It's a measurable, almost painful energy disruption. She is the real deal, and his body confirms it before his brain can even begin to rationalize it.
The dynamic is established right then and there. Nash is there for research, but Morgana knows he's treating her like a source, not a person. She agrees to help, but only if he promises not to fall back on the least common denominator, the cackling crone stereotype, and accepts her answers respectfully. She sees his underlying cynicism and challenges him immediately to drop the pretense.
And when his skepticism peaks, Morgana, feeling this unwelcome tug of desire but also immense irritation, deliberately moves to demonstrate her craft in Section 3.2. Demonstrations of the craft. She performs these powerful magical acts purely to wipe the smug, rationalizing look right off his face.
Let's analyze these demonstrations one by one through the lens of Nash's failing cynicism. First, the fire starting. She uses an ancient skill, flinging out both her arms toward the hearth to make flames erupt with a roar. She just delights in seeing Nash turn white as a sheet.
But what is his immediate reaction? He doesn't say, that's magic. He searches for the trick. He immediately tries to rationalize it, searching for wires, small charges, or a hidden gas line set under the wood. He jumps to technology or some elaborate deception.
Exactly. And when that fails to explain it, she moves on to telekinesis. She makes a decanter hop off a table 5 feet away and land perfectly on her palm. Then a glass snifter drifts to her hand so she can pour some brandy. She calls this showing off.
And then, Nash desperately clings to science. He theorizes about telekinesis as a displacement of energy, maybe a talent young girls often possess, that is now matured and stabilized in a woman. He is trying so hard to contain her power within known, albeit fringe, scientific terms. He's trying to categorize the extraordinary to make it mundane.
The levitation is next, and this one is far more personal and invasive. During a kiss, she carries both of them 6 inches off the floor. She explains that it's simply a child's trick. The emotional consequence of this is huge. Nash is left grappling with the reality of having been pulled in by some irresistible force that man had yet to put a name to. It happened while they were intimate. He can't dismiss it as some distant stage illusion.
This escalates to the final irrefutable proof, elemental magic. Nash, still desperately trying to find a logical trick, urges her to do something else. So Morgana performs a very basic call to the elements. A wind whistles into the room, and soft flakes of snow begin to fall from his ceiling, despite the mild Monterey weather outside.
The snow is the key. There is no rationalizing this. It defies known physics, it defies the environment, and it's entirely impossible to stage. The text confirms Nash is baffled and frozen in shock. This time, the wall of cynicism crumbles completely, and he just whispers, "My God, it's true, isn't it?" He has witnessed the reality of a world he built his entire career denying.
And having shattered his reality, Morgana gives him a physical anchor to this new one, the amulet. It's an emerald and purple stone charm on a silver chain, specifically, quote, for clearing the mind, promoting creativity. This is a gift, a magical tool intended to help him channel his own innate talent writing, but with clarity and focus.
This leads directly to section 3.3, the creative breakthrough and the scrying ball. The combination of Morgana's influence, the charm, and the sheer energy of their connection leads to this explosion of productivity. Nash rates his new screenplay in a 10-day dazzling all-nighter at record speed, attributing his best work ever to her inspiration. She didn't write it for him, but she cleared the debris of his cynicism, allowing his genuine genius to flow.
But while he's experiencing this professional triumph, Morgana is troubled by the intensity of their personal bond. She retreats to perform a protective ritual in her tower room, complete with candles, sandalwood, and herbs. She casts a circle designed to provide clarity, saying, "Fire, water, earth, and wind, not to break and not to mend, only now to let me see. As I will, so mote it be."
This use of the crystal sphere scrying is meant to be a strategic look ahead, a moment of objective magical assessment. But the vision betrays her objective analysis completely. She sees only Nash, accompanied by the chilling, fate-driven words: desire, demand, destiny.
And she holds out her arms in the vision, accepting him, acknowledging the terrifying depth of the bond. The vision shows her exactly what she feared, a powerful, predetermined connection she cannot control, with her rules or her spells. The scene ends dramatically with her throwing up a hand, cursing, and all the candles just winking out. She knows the stakes are now impossibly personal, and that destiny is overriding her carefully maintained boundaries.
This magical intensity pushes them right into the emotional core of the deep dive in section 4.1, the cypresses and the shared dream. Morgana brings Nash to the cypresses grove, calling it a magic place and the center, the heart of her property. It's a deeply private sanctuary, symbolizing permanence and longevity.
And Nash's response reveals a history neither of them had realized. He confesses that he fell in love with these specific trees on a vacation the year before, feeling he had to live somewhere he could see them. This implies he was subconsciously drawn, perhaps magically, back to her home, to her place of power, a full year before they even met.
Following a raw, profound conversation about his guarded past, the abandonment, the grandmother Morgana senses his deep-seated, desperate need for peace. She acknowledges she's breaking her primary rule about using magic to manipulate emotions. But she puts Nash to sleep beneath the cypress, using a cool, peaceful shadow to bring him solace.
And then she performs the ultimate act of magical healing. She creates a shared vision, a beautiful dream of a wide, rolling meadow filled with wildflowers and harp song. The specific flowers she conjures, larkspur, columbine, rosemary, thyme, are symbolic of love, passion, fidelity, and hope.
It is in this conjured, magical, and perfectly peaceful space that they make love. She gives him utter peace and the feeling of belonging, something he had sought his entire life but never experienced. It's an act of profound magical intimacy designed to erase the scars of his childhood trauma. She knows she manipulated his emotions, but the manipulation was towards a truth he was just too afraid to accept on his own.
He wakes up physically back in his own bed, alone, but the peace, the love, and the magic are vividly remembered. And this is the moment where his lifelong emotional defense mechanisms kick in violently, leading to section 4.2, the accusation and the vow.
Overwhelmed by these newfound, powerful feelings of love and belonging, which clash violently with his entrenched, survival-driven fear of commitment, he resorts to his deepest cynicism. He can't handle the love being real, so he convinces himself that Morgana made him love her, accusing her of using a spell to trick it out of me.
This accusation is rooted in his trauma. He feels utterly stripped bare, believing she used the very vulnerability he'd shared, the stories of his abusive grandmother and his abandoning mother, against him. For Nash, being stripped bare means being betrayed and left defenseless. He is reliving the betrayal of his mother, asking for money all over again.
Morgana's reaction is explosive. It cycles through fury, causing books to fly, and perfectly illustrating his ridiculousness, turning his indignant words into the bray of a donkey before settling into deep, profound hurt. She realizes his fear of losing his freedom is, at that moment, more powerful than his love for her. The choice is survival, and he chooses to run.
And this hurt leads to the absolute defining boundary of their relationship, a genius act of strategic magic, the oath. Morgana, laying her hand on her amulet, swears, "I promised I wouldn't take more than you wanted to give me, and I never go back on my word."
This is crucial. She doesn't use magic to force him to stay. Instead, she uses the absolute, unbreakable integrity of her word, which is the most binding magic a hereditary witch possesses, to force his free will. By swearing she will only accept what he freely offers, she shifts the responsibility for the love entirely onto him. His only obstacle now is himself.
Unable to reconcile his love with his fear, Nash runs. He flees her home and escapes back to the perceived safety of Los Angeles to try and reclaim his lone wolf status. But it's a futile attempt.
He spends nearly a month in LA trying to suppress the thoughts of her, but the love she gave him, the peace he felt, and the reality of her power just haunt him. Every scene he writes is hollow. Every moment is defined by her absence. He realizes his survival mechanism running is now a path to deep unhappiness.
This brings us to section 4.3, the final revelation and acceptance. The emotional breakthrough forces him to physically act. He tracks her down to her mother's Castle Donovan in Ireland.
His journey to Ireland is a perfect metaphor for his internal struggle. He takes this frantic, jarring ride in a beat-up car, drives into a ditch, a clear sign that the polished Hollywood machine is breaking down. And this forces him to face his destiny without any artifice. He arrives unshaven and exhausted, confronting Morgana's father, Matthew, and making a stand. "I've come for your daughter," and that's that.
When he finally finds Morgana on the beach, he is completely ready to accept her. He sheds all his armor. He confesses his love, saying, "The woman I love is a witch, just adds some interest to the situation." He realizes the powerful feelings were his own. The magic was only an accelerant that brought his true emotions to the surface. He was the one afraid of commitment, not the victim of a spell.
Morgana's response, however, is the ultimate confirmation that destiny is at play, overriding even her most stringent magical protocols. She reveals she is pregnant with their child.
She admits she took magical precautions against conception, but fate intervened, and she believes she was meant to have the child. This instantly seals the bond she had feared and then accepted in the scrying ball. Nash's decision to commit is immediately met with the consequence of that commitment.
And his reaction is immediate, total acceptance. His fear of the pregnant, angry wife is instantly replaced by the reality of love. He instantly begins planning their future family life, including building a nursery and changing the wall color from the cold blue, which he had instinctively chosen in his past, lonely fantasy of a home, to bright yellow. He has stopped running and started building.
That color change is so profound. Blue is often the color of solitude or sadness. Yellow is the color of light, warmth, and hope. He is deliberately choosing a bright, committed future. And the final wonderful detail ties everything back to the legacy and the collision of their worlds.
Nash asks about the baby's potential power. Morgana confirms that the Donovan genes are very strong, and the chances of the baby being a witch are very high. The Hollywood cynic is now welcoming a powerful, magical child into his life.
The ultimate synthesis of Nash's world and Morgana's power is complete. But, she adds with a loving certainty that grounds the entire magical narrative in human connection. She bets the child will have his eyes.
This deep dive really shows us that, for Morgana Donovan, the true magic was never simply in the cauldron, the levitation, or the elaborate ritual. It was in the vulnerability and the intentionality of the heart. Her oath, that strategic commitment to only take what Nash freely offered, was the ultimate catalyst. It forced him to confront his deepest fears, which stemmed entirely from his difficult, lonely, and traumatic past.
Absolutely. And his acceptance, not just of her, but of the hereditary power, the messy reality of a life with magic, and the realization that the intense feelings were fundamentally his own and not conjured, that proved that his love, once fully embraced, was more powerful than even the strongest magic. He transitioned from a man who used predictable horror stories as a shield to someone actively living inside his own true, powerful narrative.
Indeed. And it forces you to wonder about the future of this collision. Nash Kirkland, the great storyteller who thrives on the battle between ultimate good and ultimate evil, who insisted on that lingering doubt in the final fade-out, what would he write next, now that he is permanently living inside his own supernatural script?
He accepted a future where his daughter is highly likely to be a witch, inheriting power that could shatter the laws of reality. Will his next screenplay focus on the quiet beauty of domestic stability, or will he feel the irresistible urge to write about the new monster he now faces, the terrifying, unpredictable power of unconditional love and permanence?